The world of Bewitched was supposed to feel magical. With a twitch of Samantha Stevens' nose, every problem disappeared, every argument became funny, and suburban life looked absolutely perfect. For millions of Americans in the 1960s, the show became the ultimate escape from reality. But behind the bright colors, catchy music, and laugh track, the set of Bewitched was hiding a very different story. While audiences watched a charming fantasy every week, the cast and crew were dealing with pain, addiction, secret affairs, backstage resentment, and heartbreaking personal struggles that Hollywood worked desperately to keep hidden. In fact, some of the darkest moments connected to the show were kept secret for decades. And once you learn what was really happening behind the scenes, you may never watch Bewitched the same way again. Perhaps the most tragic secret involved Dick York, the original actor who played Darren Stevens. To fans, York was energetic, funny, and impossible to replace. But what viewers never realized was that he was living in almost constant agony during the filming of the show. Years before Bewitched, York suffered a devastating back injury while filming the movie They Came to Cordura. During a physically demanding scene, he severely damaged his spine, and the injury never properly healed. By the time Bewitched became a hit, York was surviving on painkillers just to make it through filming. Crew members later recalled seeing him lying on the floor between takes because the pain was too overwhelming to sit upright. Some days, he reportedly had to be physically helped onto the set. Yet the studio continued filming as if everything was normal. Then, during the 5th season, York suddenly collapsed while filming an episode. Production immediately stopped, and he was rushed to the hospital. He never returned to the series again. Instead of honestly explaining the situation to audiences, the studio quietly replaced him with Dick Sargent and hoped viewers would simply accept the change. Today, television historians still refer to sudden, unexplained recasts as the Darren syndrome, all because of what happened on Bewitched. Another heartbreaking secret centered around Alice Pierce, the beloved actress who played the nosy neighbor Gladys Kravitz. Pierce brought chaotic energy and hilarious physical comedy to the series, but behind the scenes, she was quietly fighting terminal ovarian cancer. Even more tragic, she reportedly kept much of her illness hidden because she feared being replaced by the studio if producers discovered how serious her condition truly was. While audiences laughed at her frantic performances, Pierce was undergoing painful treatments and struggling through exhausting filming schedules. She continued working despite her declining health because she loved acting and didn't want to lose the role. Sadly, she passed away during the 2nd season of the show. The studio quickly recast the character and avoided publicly discussing the details of her illness because they feared damaging the light-hearted image of the series. For years, many fans had no idea how much suffering Pierce endured while making people laugh every week. As dark as those tragedies were, the atmosphere on set could also become surprisingly chaotic. During the 1960s, heavy drinking culture was common throughout Hollywood, and according to many stories connected to the production, the Bewitched set was no exception. Cast and crew members often participated in the infamous three-martini lunch culture that dominated the entertainment industry at the time. Some reports even claimed that alcohol occasionally found its way into rehearsals and filming sessions. While the show presented the image of the perfect American family, the reality behind the cameras was far messier. Long hours, constant pressure, and personal problems created an environment where drinking became normalized. The studio naturally worked hard to keep this side of production hidden from the public because Bewitched was marketed as wholesome family entertainment. But behind a magical suburban fantasy was a cast struggling with stress, exhaustion, and the unhealthy habits of old Hollywood culture. Then there was Agnes Moorehead, the legendary actress who played Samantha's dramatic mother, Endora. Moorehead was known as one of the most talented performers on the show, but she also developed a reputation for being eccentric and intensely serious about her craft. Crew members reportedly whispered about her unusual spiritual beliefs and mysterious backstage habits. Unlike many actors who simply treated the show as another job, Moorehead seemed deeply fascinated by the supernatural themes surrounding the series. She often preferred wearing her own antique jewelry instead of wardrobe department accessories, and stories circulated around the set about certain pieces carrying strange energy or personal significance. Some crew members even claimed she performed quiet rituals or cleansing routines inside her dressing room before filming. Whether those rumors were exaggerated or not, the studio reportedly disliked anything that made the show appear too strange behind the scenes. Executives wanted audiences focused on harmless comedy, not stories about supernatural obsessions developing among the cast. Money also created its own hidden controversies behind the scenes. Although Samantha Stevens appeared glamorous on screen, many fans never realized that Elizabeth Montgomery often contributed heavily to her own wardrobe styling. During the early years of color television, studios were desperate to create visually impressive productions while still controlling costs. According to stories from production insiders, Montgomery frequently wore modified off-the-rack clothing or even personal fashion items rather than expensive designer outfits created entirely by the studio. Executives allegedly wanted viewers to believe the series had a far larger wardrobe budget than it actually did. Maintaining the illusion of upper-middle-class perfection was extremely important to the image of the show. Hollywood understood that audiences weren't just watching Samantha Stevens. They were admiring the fantasy of an idealized American lifestyle. The studio carefully protected that illusion at all costs. The replacement of Dick York also created serious backstage tension that the public rarely saw. Although Dick York and Dick Sargent never worked together directly on the series, the shadow of the replacement haunted the production for years. York reportedly felt deeply hurt watching another actor take over the role he had helped make iconic. Meanwhile, Sargent faced enormous pressure from fans constantly comparing him to the original Darren. The studio became so nervous about controversy that executives reportedly monitored interviews closely to avoid public comments that could fuel rumors of a feud. While both actors handled the situation professionally in public, insiders described a lingering bitterness surrounding the entire replacement situation. Fans debated endlessly about which Darren was better, but behind the scenes, the issue represented something far sadder: a talented actor physically destroyed by the demands of Hollywood. But perhaps the biggest secret of all involved the collapse of Elizabeth Montgomery's marriage to producer William Asher. To the public, Montgomery and Asher looked like the perfect Hollywood power couple. Together, they had built one of television's biggest hits. But as the years passed, cracks in the relationship reportedly became impossible to hide. Montgomery allegedly grew frustrated with the limitations of Samantha's perfect housewife image and began pulling away from both the show and her marriage. Reports later claimed she became romantically involved with director Richard Michaels while still working alongside Asher on the series. The tension created an extremely uncomfortable atmosphere behind the scenes, especially during the final seasons. Yet the studio worked aggressively to keep the problems hidden because executives feared a public scandal involving the show's star and producer could damage ratings. Instead, the cast and crew were forced to continue working together while their personal lives quietly fell apart behind closed doors. Looking back today, the legacy of Bewitched feels strangely bittersweet. On screen, the show represented happiness, magic, and effortless suburban perfection. But behind every laugh and magical spell were actors struggling through physical pain, emotional heartbreak, addiction, career pressure, and personal secrets they could never fully reveal to the public. In many ways, the real magic of Bewitched wasn't Samantha's powers at all. It was the cast's ability to keep performing while their private worlds were collapsing around them. And maybe that's why the show still fascinates audiences decades later. Beneath the fantasy, there was always something painfully human hiding in plain sight.